Hello, this is Lama here. This video is on a serious subject. It's about the corona crisis that's ongoing at the moment, and everyone will be very conscious of. And it concerns how certain paranormal enthusiasts and paranormal teams are conducting themselves during this crisis, and how some are disregarding and flouting certain government guidelines and rules and behaving in an irresponsible manner. Now, in the first half of this video, I'm going to be talking on general issues, and then in the second half of this video I'm going to address a particular paranormal channel on YouTube and talk about what they've been doing and naming and shaming them. Now, the focus of this video concerns people going out to conduct paranormal investigations, and where they may be doing so in contravention of the government guidance and rules that's in place and has been in place for a number of weeks now. I'm speaking to you on Easter Monday, the 13th of April. Just the other day, the total number of deaths in the UK, the country that I'm in, the total number of deaths related to coronavirus cases in hospitals exceeded a total of 10,000 deaths. At the end of last week, the daily total of recorded deaths related to the coronavirus in this country, the UK, began to exceed 900 a day. And as the current week progresses, we can probably expect the daily death toll to exceed 1,000 quite shortly. We probably haven't reached the peak of this epidemic in the UK yet. It's probably going to continue to get worse over the coming weeks before it starts to get better. Now, in the UK, a few weeks ago, around early mid-March, is when people really started to understand how serious the coronavirus issue was becoming. The first UK death in this country was on the 5th of March. In early mid-March, the UK government started issuing guidance and guidelines to people concerning self-isolation in terms of those people who may have symptoms of the coronavirus and how they should self-isolate. As we got to around mid-March, those were firmed up, and also people were told about certain vulnerable people who were told to stay at home for certain lengths of time, for example if they were elderly or if they had certain underlying serious health conditions of a certain type. As we got around mid-March also, the government announced that they were partially going to close all the schools, and that schools would only remain open for certain categories of children. And then on the 23rd of March, which is 3 weeks ago to the day, the Prime Minister announced a series of restrictive measures that would come into force immediately at that time, concerning the ability of people to go out and the importance about why people should stay in as much as possible. As I say, the Prime Minister announced those on the 23rd of March. It's 3 weeks to the day. They're due to be reviewed this coming week. I think we can expect them to stay in place exactly as they are, if not become perhaps slightly more stringent. Some people have referred to them as a lockdown. I would say that they're a partial lockdown. I'll come on to the implications of these rules for people. But I just want to start by saying that my particular problem or beef at present is that there clearly are some paranormal enthusiasts, whether they're hobbyists, amateurs, semi-professionals, professionals, by professional, I'm just referring to the fact that it may be their main form of income, may come from doing paranormal investigations. I'm not making a comment as to the way they conduct their investigations. I was referring to the fact that they are paid, they get income, primary income, and therefore I'm just using the term professional in that sense. So whether they're hobbyists, amateurs, or semi-professionals, or professionals, these paranormal investigators are going out still in a manner which in certain situations is clearly contrary to the government guidance, which is now enforceable by the police and has been for some time, and or they're behaving in a way that's clearly irresponsible. So let me expand on what I mean by that. In some cases, people are driving some distance to go to locations when it's not a part of their job or their work or employment, in order to conduct paranormal investigations. As far as I'm concerned, that's clearly against the government guidance. People may claim that it's for the purpose of exercise, but as I will address, that's clearly not in line with government guidance. I don't have a particular issue with if people are walking from their home or staying local and they're going as exercise and they're combining their daily exercise with maybe doing some kind of tentative investigation, like walking down the road from your home, going to a local graveyard in the daytime when it's well lit, there's no one about, it's quiet, it's not dark, they're walking along tarmac paths and they might have a ghost box, what people call a ghost box, what other people might call a broken radio with them. I don't have a particular issue with that. What I do have a particular issue with is when people are travelling longer distances by car to locations and they try and do it on the grounds maybe that they're trying to take exercise. The issue here is relating to driving unnecessarily. If you are driving in your car on unnecessary journeys at the moment during this coronavirus crisis, you are creating an unnecessary risk by driving, that you may be involved in an accident, and that accident could affect you and other road users. It may require people to be admitted to hospital, may require the police to attend, maybe even the fire service to attend, the ambulance to attend. That will involve at least social mixing and possibilities for cross-infection. Then when you're admitted to the hospital, you're putting unnecessary pressure on the NHS. The key government advice is to stay at home as much as possible, and for several reasons that can have the impact of helping to protect the NHS by reducing the impact on the capacity of the NHS to deal with people who have got coronavirus, who have it sufficiently serious that they need to be treated in hospital. So the core thing at the moment is to try and stay at home and reduce the impact on the NHS, so the NHS has capacity to deal with coronavirus patients. But if you're going around, driving around, making unnecessary journeys, for whatever purpose, each time you do that, you're creating an unnecessary risk that you'll be involved or you will cause a serious accident where people may have to attend to deal with it, and that people then will have to be admitted to hospital, and that will put an unnecessary pressure on the NHS when they are trying to cope with coronavirus cases, and the cases that are being admitted due to a lag is only going to increase over the coming weeks. That's my first issue. My second big issue is that regardless of whether you're walking or you're travelling by car or other motor vehicle to a location, even if you're going alone or just within your household, and you're not socially mixing with other people, even if you're just going alone, if you are going to a location to do a paranormal investigation, and that location is inherently not very safe, for example, if you go to a derelict building, that could have all sorts of dangers there, where you could cause yourself to be injured by putting yourself at unnecessary risk, especially if you do it in the dark. But even regardless of whether it's in the dark or not, if you are going into a derelict building that may be unsafe in some way, there may be debris, there may be broken glass, you may fall, you may trip on something, etc., etc. There's all sorts of inherent risks in doing that sort of thing. And of course the same thing will affect people doing urban exploring as well. If you go into an unsafe location, whether it's a derelict building, or you may be in it could be an open space that's just unsafe because you can't see where you're going, or it's dangerous because there's stuff all over the floor where you can get hurt. If you causing, that's completely irresponsible, because you are creating the possibility where you could get hurt, where you're somewhere doing something where you don't need to be. And that's regardless of whether it's a professional or semi-professional investigator, or whether you're just a hobbyist or an enthusiast who's going out to do it. It doesn't matter. If you're going to a location that's inherently dangerous, where you might get hurt, that's completely irresponsible. And that doesn't matter whether it's a building that's derelict, or some other location that may be an open space that may inherently be dangerous in some way because it's derelict in some other fashion. Again, if you get hurt, you're causing unnecessary burdening on the NHS to have to deal with you, and you're causing yourself probably to have to mix with emergency staff. The police might have to attend, the fire brigade might have to attend, the ambulance might have to attend. And then when you go into hospital, you might have coronavirus, you might give it to a member of clinical staff, a nurse, or they may give it to you. So that's my two main bones of contention. Driving distances to do investigations, even if it's under the supposed justification of exercising, which isn't allowed anyway, and I'll come on to that. And two, going to locations that are inherently unsafe, because both of them, when you should be trying to minimise the risk of putting a burden on the NHS by making unnecessary car journeys and unnecessary travel by motor vehicle of any kind, and by going to a location that's inherently dangerous, you are not minimising the risk that you might have to put a burden on the NHS at this time, when we can't afford that. So that's my two bones of contention with people. Now, this video is more going to be focused on the guidelines, and in particular about when you're going to go out, and in terms of also addressing the particular guidelines on exercising and going to open spaces. But just to say, only about 2 weeks ago, I appeared on an online phone-in, and I took the team Ghosts of Britain to task directly about the coronavirus symptoms which they said that they considered that they'd had at some point in early or mid-March. And I took them to task on the fact that they appeared not to be adhering to the government guidance about self-isolating. Now, the chronology of their dates is all a bit vague, but they seem to accept that perhaps they weren't self-isolating when they should have been, due to having symptoms. And at the same phone-in, I also took Mark Smith of PXTV to task as well, because he claimed that he had been self-isolating during a certain period in March. But I trapped him into him saying that, and then being able to reveal that he hadn't actually been self-isolating during the period that he claimed. So I caught them both out. The chronology of the dates are a bit vague, but they both put their hands up. So I've already addressed that. I'm not going to address that in this video, but just to say, I have already addressed that, and that's two teams that I have already addressed. The team that I address later on in this video will be someone else, a different YouTube channel. And in the case of Ghosts of Britain, in terms of them going out, they have stated that their paranormal work is their main income. And as I'll come on to in a minute, they can make a justification that they're allowed to go out to do investigations at the moment because it's their income. And they've said that the police have contacted them about this, and they said that they can. So that isn't the focus of my video though. But if they are going, I don't know if they are or they're not, but as a general point, even if professional or semi-professional teams are going out to locations, and they're going to locations that may inherently be unsafe, that is still irresponsible. Whether Ghosts of Britain have done that, I don't know. I haven't looked that closely. Maybe there's other teams that have done that, I don't know. Also, if you're going to a location that's inherently unsafe, because you may be, for example, you may be going somewhere where you may trip on something, you may turn your foot, you may break your leg, and you do it in the dark or the dusk, that's even more irresponsible. But this video isn't about Ghosts of Britain or about Mark Smith per se. I'm making a general point in the first half of this video, and in the second half I will address a particular YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel I'm going to address is Hell's House, or as it's now called, Bum Fluff Paranormal. And when I get to that, I'll explain why. But I want to move on to address the main issue now, to do with the actual government guidance. So on the 23rd of March, exactly 3 weeks to the day, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced a series of measures. Some people are referring to them as the lockdown measures. I think I would refer them maybe as more of a partial lockdown, because you're allowed to go out under certain conditions for certain reasons. So just look at that. So I'm going to show a series of slides here now, and these are all taken from the UK government website. These are all official documents on the UK government website, and what I'll do is I'll put links to all the different things that I'm showing you. I'll put them below this video as a link, probably in the pinned comment, if you want to check them out yourself. So this is the guidance that relates to the announcement that the Prime Minister made on the 23rd of March. You'll see it was published on the 23rd of March, although it's been updated. But this is the exact guidance that the government gave out that relates directly to the announcement that the Prime Minister made when he announced the so-called lockdown on the 23rd of March. And if you haven't seen this document that I'm about to show you, you probably should do, if you haven't read it yourself. But yeah, you should probably go and look at it. If you've got access to the internet at home, there's no reason why you shouldn't have done so. It's been there for 3 weeks. So I'm just going to go through some of the slides now. So this is the main document that relates to the lockdown measures. I'll just use that term for the sake of argument. And this is the staying at home and away from others, bracket social distancing. And it starts, the single most important action we can all take in fighting the coronavirus is to stay at home in order to protect the NHS and save lives. And that's because, for several reasons. One is to do with not spreading the coronavirus or getting it from someone else by not socially mixing. And the other aspect is that if you stay at home and you don't go out, even if you're like avoiding going on unnecessary journeys in the car, you're minimising the risk that you might be involved in some sort of accident that could also indirectly put a pressure on the NHS, even though it's not because of coronavirus. And it continues, this is just the main bit of text introducing this document. It says, when we reduce our day-to-day contact with other people, we reduce the spread of the infection. That is why the government has introduced, the 23rd of March, 3 new measures. 1. Requiring people to stay at home except for very limited purposes. 2. Closing certain businesses and venues. 3. Stopping all social gatherings of more than 2 people in public. Every person in the UK must comply with these new measures, which come into effect on the Monday the 23rd of March. The relevant authorities, including the police, have been given the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings. The government will look again at these measures after 3 weeks and relax them if the evidence shows this is possible. Now, we're exactly on 3 weeks now, and the government will be reviewing this week, and we can expect an announcement in the coming days about this. I don't think there's any expectations that these will be relaxed. If anything, they might even become more severe, but I definitely don't expect them to be relaxed. Now, the document that's actually linked here, you can see there's a document linked. This is the key document policy, the document that was given as the exact guidance that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister's statement, related to. And this is the document itself. And if you haven't read this, you definitely should, and I'll put a link to it below. It's staying at home and away from others, social distancing, and it was released on the 23rd of March, updated the 29th of March. And there's various sections to this. I can't remember exactly how many, but there's various subsections. But the one that I want to focus is on section 1, staying at home. So let's go through this. This is the key thing about when you can and can't go out. So it says, you should only leave the house for very limited purposes. Let me have a list. First one is shopping for basic necessities, for example, food and medicine, which must be as infrequent as possible. The second one is one form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk or cycle, alone or with members of your household. Third one, any medical need, including to donate blood, avoid or escape risk of injury or harm, for example, if you had a house fire, or to provide care or to help a vulnerable person. That could include maybe delivering essential items to someone who was having to self-isolate, or some sort of volunteering distribution work. And then the fourth item is travelling for work purposes, but only where you cannot work from home. And no, there's nothing about only essential workers or key workers or critical workers can go to work. No, there's no such restriction. There's other sections about this, but just to say, there is no restriction on it saying that only essential workers can go to work at the moment. Anyone can go to work, but only where you cannot work from home. And then it says, and I'll underline this part, these reasons are exceptions. Even when doing these activities, you should be minimising time spent outside of the home. So it's emphasising, it's not saying you should go and do these things. It's saying these are the exceptions under which you can go out. And when you do these things, you should minimise the time you do them for. And then it adds, of course, it mentions the social distancing measure of ensuring you're 2 metres apart from anyone when you're about and about, other than if you're in their household. Now, there was some confusion about whether you can travel to take your exercise. And later on in this week, the government released this. And this was published on the 27th of March, a few days later. And this is guidance about access to green spaces. And it's guidance on using green spaces and protecting yourself and others. This isn't the whole of the document, but I'll show you some of the key bits that I want to look at here. And it introduces it, and it says, the government's priorities to save lives and the best way to protect yourself and others from illness is to stay at home. However, exercise is still important for people's physical and mental well-being, so the government has said people can leave their homes for exercise once a day. And then it mentions a list of things here. It says, please use the following guidance in order to stay safe. And these are enforceable by the police. And there's a number of measures here. I haven't got the whole list, but these are the ones at the top, and these are the ones I want to focus on. And it starts, stay local and use open spaces near to your home where possible. Do not travel unnecessarily. You should only go outside alone or with members of your own household. Keep at least 2 metres apart from anyone outside of your household at all times. Gatherings of more than 2 in parks or other public places have been banned, and the police will enforce this. If you have a garden, make use of this space for exercise and fresh air. It does continue, but there's more. But the one I want to focus on is the first one. Stay local and use open spaces near to your home where possible. Do not travel unnecessarily. So, for those people who are paranormal enthusiasts or amateurs and are going out to locations to do investigations, and you are trying to claim you're justifying on the basis of you're doing your daily exercise, this applies directly to you if you're going out to claiming you're doing your exercise. You are supposed to stay local and use open spaces near to where your home where possible. Do not travel unnecessarily. So that means you cannot go in your car and travel some distance to some scrubland somewhere on the premise of supposedly using your daily exercise allowance in order to do a paranormal investigation. Nor can you get in the car to drive a long way to go to some graveyard either. And there's another very convenient document on the government website, which I'll also link below, which is an FAQs. This basically reinforces some of the points I've already done. This is a more convenient document to digest though. And this is an FAQs document that they published on the 29th of March. It says what you can and can't do. And there's a few there are numerous sections of this document, and it's a very good document to look at if you want to conveniently find various stuff on certain sorts of questions. I want to just focus on a few. And again, it mentions the first question is, when am I allowed to leave the house? This is really reinforcing what I've said already from the other document. You should only leave the house for very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities, for example food and medicine, which must be as infrequent as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example a run, walk or cycle alone or with members of your household. Any medical need. Travelling for work purposes, but only where you cannot work from home. Section 13 of that document, the FAQs, is, can I go to the park? You can also infer that this means going to graveyards, for example, or scrubland or some deserted location. You can still go to the park for outdoor exercise once a day, but only alone or with members of your household, not in groups. Communal places within parks such as sports courts, playgrounds and outdoor gyms have been closed to protect everyone's health. We ask that households use parks responsibly and keep 2 metres apart from others at all times. Unless you are with members of your household, gatherings of more than 2 people in parks and other public places have been banned. The police have the powers to disperse gatherings and issue fines if necessary. Therefore, you are not allowed to go to do paranormal investigations with other people who are not from your household. Section 14. Can I drive to a national park or other green space to walk? We advise you to stay local and use open spaces near to your home where possible. Do not travel unnecessarily. Again, it's the same thing as I found from the other document I read out earlier. You can still go to the park for outdoor exercise once a day, but only by yourself or within your household, not in groups. We ask you to keep 2 metres apart. And then I'd like to show you on the same subject, this is an official UK government video about exercising safely during the coronavirus crisis. And it says, if you're heading outdoors to exercise. I'll just play the video. Stay local. Okay, so that was that video. But I just want to focus on two particular stills from that video. One is this one. Use the open spaces near your home if you can. This will particularly be relevant when I get to the paranormal team that I want to talk about in a minute, or the paranormal channel. And the second still is this: don't travel unnecessarily. Again, this is particularly relevant to the topic I'm about to come on to. So, you know, the guidance is stay at home as much as possible. Don't go out unless you really need to. The reasons and exceptions where you can go out are clearly stated. You shouldn't be travelling unnecessarily. You shouldn't be making unnecessary car journeys. You shouldn't be travelling to go to open spaces for exercise. And it is completely irresponsible at the moment to go to locations to do paranormal investigations, whether they're in buildings or outside buildings, where there's some kind of derelict nature to them that makes it inherently safe, where you may get injured. And that may then put, as I explained earlier, an unnecessary burden on the NHS. It's just common sense. So please don't do it. Now, in this part of the video, I want to address one particular paranormal channel. Now, I'm sure there are many people who are following the rules and are being sensible and responsible, and they are not going out to do investigations. That's to be commended. But there are clearly some people who want to flout the rules or ignore them, or think for some reason they don't apply to them, or are ignorant of them, and are still going out to do paranormal investigations in a manner which is not consistent with the guidance and the guidelines, and isn't consistent with acting responsibly at the moment. Now, as I said earlier, there could be some situations where someone could walk from their home, walk to a graveyard, in the daytime, in the light, with a good visibility on tarmac paths, going to a quiet location, getting their exercise for the day, wandering around a graveyard a little bit with a ghost box. I don't really have a problem with that. But if you're travelling to a location by car, some distance, certainly, I do have an issue with that. And however you got to a location, whether you drove there or walked there, if you're going to a location that's unsafe, I have a problem with that too, for the reasons I explained earlier on. So now I'm going to go on to this part of the video now, where I'm going to address a particular YouTube channel. And I'm going to call them out. And that channel is Bumfluff Paranormal, formerly known as Hell's House. It's the channel on YouTube, got over 1,000 subscribers, and it's Rose and her husband Kev. I'm not disclosing anything private there. They put that information on the public domain on their YouTube channel. So by just mentioning their Christian names, I've not breached their privacy in any way. Just in case someone tries to make some ridiculous claim. Now, I'm sure there may be other teams that I could have addressed in this video. Why am I picking on this particular channel? Because it came to my attention. Because I'm subscribed to this channel, Bumfluff Paranormal, and I saw videos coming onto my feed over successive days that were clearly breaching the government guidelines. So I'm afraid if you feel you've been picked out unfairly, you are just the people that came onto my radar as being people who were clearly flouting the government guidelines, and you did so on 3 successive days recently. So that's why I'm calling you out. There may well be other teams that are bigger than you, that are also flouting the guidelines, and maybe in a worse way than you. I'm perfectly willing to accept that, but you're the ones that came onto my radar because I saw your videos on my feed, and because I subscribed to you, and I saw what you were doing. So I'm going to deal with Bumfluff Paranormal, formerly known as Hell's House, Rose and Kev. So let me just take you through what they've done recently. Now, I will add, before I get on to that, if they had an email address stated, I would email them about this, but they don't have any. I can't find any email contact for them, so I'm doing this video, and I'm addressing them in this video, and I suspect that some way or the other, this video will be brought to their attention. I very much hope it does, because I am going to address them directly during this part of the video. But just to start by dealing with what exactly it is that they've been doing recently. So, on 3 successive days, recent days, over the latter part of last week, they travelled significant distances that were completely unnecessary. And they did it on 3 successive days. The dates were Thursday the 9th of April, Friday the 10th of April, and Saturday the 11th of April. They also went out on yesterday on the Sunday, but I'm going to ignore that. But because they weren't driving to some location to do an investigation or walk. These were all live broadcasts that they did. So I'm not putting out any information that's not in the public domain. They live streamed them travelling to these locations and live streamed the investigations. The videos are all still up, and they have all been downloaded by me. I have evidence of you doing this. Even if you delete those videos now, I've still got evidence of them. Now, what did they do on these days? Okay, on Thursday the 9th of April, they travelled approximately 15 miles, 15 miles, a round trip of about 30 miles therefore. They drove about half an hour back. They drove as far as nearly the Peak District. I'm not going to say where they live, don't worry. I'm not going to dox you or breach your privacy or anything like that. I'm not going to publish your address or anything like that or circulate it. I don't do that sort of thing. But you did show in your video where you were going. And in terms of the farm location that you went to on 2 days, I know exactly where you went. Exactly where you went. But if you're going to live stream your journey, you are putting it into the public domain exactly where you went by showing your journey. So I'm not breaching your privacy in any way. But don't worry, I'm not going to state where you went exactly. I'm not going to state where you live. But you did go to the outskirts of the Peak District. You drove, must have been about half an hour journey each way, 15 miles. And what were you doing on this journey? Well, you were doing a reconnaissance for different locations to go to do paranormal investigations. You made certain little detours, going back and forth, dropping off at one place, going off at another place, to suss out places that you thought would be good to do a paranormal investigation. How that fits into the government guidance, I don't know. Now, you did get a little bit of exercise when you got to a certain destination on that particular day, on Thursday the 9th. Yes, you may have got a little bit of exercise, but you didn't need to do a round trip of 30 miles to do it. In fact, at one place you stopped off at, a man actually told you you're not supposed to drive to the countryside in order to get your exercise. He actually told you on the 9th of April, the Thursday. Yet you went and did it again on the Friday and on the Saturday. And so he told you, and I'm going to tell you and explain this to you now and persuade you to stop doing it. God, this is a warning. I haven't informed the police. I haven't. And someone who I discussed this with was going to report you to the police. And I persuaded them not to, because I said I would address you in this video. So I've got you off the hook. What you've done already has been and gone. Nothing can be done about that. But in this video, I'm saying to you, Rose and Kev, please don't do this again. And if you do, I or someone else will feel obliged to report you to the police, because you are clearly flouting the guidance, the rules that are enforceable by the police. So please don't do it again. So, just going back. On that Thursday the 9th, you drove about 15 miles, 30 miles round trip. You were reconnaissing certain places. A man even told you you're not supposed to drive to the countryside to exercise. He asked you where you came from, and you said something to him that was untrue, didn't you? You said, oh, we've just come from down the road. No, you didn't just come from down the road. You came 15 miles away. You then, on your way back, dropped off at one place, had a look at that, got back in the car, drove a bit more, drove back the way you came, and you found yourself at a deserted farm. And you had a look around there, and you thought, oh, this will be a good place to investigate, to do a paranormal investigation. And then you went back home. The next day, Friday the 10th, you went out to that farm. I know exactly where it is. It's about 13 miles away from where you live. 13. It must take you probably about 25 minutes to get there. So you did a round trip on that day of about 25 odd miles. Again, you probably were out driving alone for nearly an hour on each of those days, each of them. So you went to the farm, you did a paranormal investigation there, clearly against the government guidance. You're not supposed to go out driving unnecessarily. You're not supposed to go to the countryside. And the other element that you caused an unnecessary risk was you went into this derelict farmstead, into buildings that were clearly unsafe. For example, you were climbing over 5-bar gates. You went to a brick barn structure, and Rose actually read the sign that said something along the lines of danger, unsafe structure. You saw the sign, yet you went in the building. That's right, you saw the sign, you read it out loud to your audience, and then you went in the barn. And then you went to the farm house, and Kev handled loads of broken glass with his hands. They weren't bare hands, he could have gloves on, but they were broken panes of glass in order for you to get access into the building, a derelict building. He could have cut his hand. So you'd gone out for 2 days to doing these unnecessary journeys. And then the next day, on Saturday the 11th, the third successive day, you went out yet again on another long journey. You went to some cave in some wooded location, a similar drive of some kind. Again, you went out with some paranormal equipment, I believe. The total journey, you probably drove about 25, it was probably about 25 minutes drive again. Must have been about that. So it was a similar distance to the previous day. That's just one way, of course. So on those 3 days, you must have done a round trip each day of nearly an hour each time of driving. And you went to some cave where it was awfully dark in the cave. You could have tripped, you could have stumbled, you could have slipped. You shouldn't have been going to the countryside anyway. You should not have been going driving that journey to go to the countryside. Yes, you're allowed your daily exercise, and you seem to think, Rose, that you're allowed to go to these locations to do your exercise. No, you're not. You're not allowed to drive 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the car to somewhere to do your exercise. That's clearly against the government guidance. Also, because I know where you live, because you disclosed it in one of your videos, you showed where you live. Don't worry, I won't say where it is, but I know exactly where you live. I've got your exact address. Why have I got your exact address? Because if you do this again, I or someone else will report you to the police. That's why I've got your address. Don't worry, I'm not the sort of person that's going to publish your address or circulate it. But we do know your exact address, and that's the reason why, in case we need to report you to the police. I'm sure you prefer me to give you this warning than for someone else to report you to the police already, because I persuaded them not to. So I'm giving you a chance here. Now, you have in your case, you've got a particularly good reason not to need to go to these long distances to travel to the countryside or areas of countryside for supposed exercise. And the reason is that where you live, you've got very close to you, even within walking distance, you've got some really nice, really big, open green spaces. So you have no need to travel all these miles and miles and miles in your car to get access to an open green space. No need whatsoever. You're fortunate. Some people don't have that. But you absolutely have no need to make all those journeys. So you've done it on 3 successive days. You made 3 journeys of similar length, going to locations. The farmstead was an unsafe place to go. The cave was probably unsafe. You could have slipped, you could have turned your ankle, broken your ankle, whatever. All those unnecessary journeys in the car, you are increasing the risk that you may or be involved in a car accident. This probably would require, given the sorts of roads you were driving on, would probably require the ambulance to turn up, and the speed you're going at would require the ambulance to turn up, the fire brigade to turn up, possibly, especially if you hide yourself in a location like a barn, a rural location, require the police to turn up, almost certainly. You requiring those emergency service personnel to mix with each other and with you. You could cross-infect them, they could cross-infect you with coronavirus. You might have to be admitted to the hospital, or someone you have an accident with might have to be admitted to the hospital. I think one of the locations you went to is in Staffordshire. I won't say any more than that. Here is a Staffordshire Police official statement, along with some other local leaders, giving clear advice about whether you should be travelling to the countryside or not. So if you want to know what your local police, or at least local to where or regional to where you travel to, what their view is of you doing this sort of thing, here it is for you, in case you want to dispute it. I've got a section of the text here. So this was something they put out on the 3rd of April. And the particular bit I want to look at here is the section of text near the top. It says, Assistant Chief Constable Simon Tweets said, "We understand that in the warmer weather, because it has been getting nice the last week, it's getting quite warm, it can be tempting for people to think they can visit places such as Cannock Chase or the Roaches, but we're asking people to stay at home." And he goes on to say, and this is the really important bit here, there was initially some confusion around exercising, but people should only be exercising near their homes and not travelling to the countryside. So therefore, those journeys, or some of those journeys that I saw you take, Rose and Kev, to somewhere in Staffordshire, in the countryside, that police force for that area say you shouldn't do it. You may say, oh, well, we weren't mixing with anyone else. Fine, you weren't, I accept that. But you're still creating unnecessary risks. You're going to locations where you could get hurt. You're creating unnecessary risk by using your car on long journeys when you don't need to at all. These are all creating risks where you could get injured or someone else could get injured, and therefore you put a pressure on the NHS. So please understand that. Now, let's look at the hypocrisy, and this is for Rose. You are often in your videos, even on the ones where you were travelling doing these live streams to these places, complaining about people not adhering to the coronavirus guidelines. For example, about being 2 metres apart. Yet you yourself don't adhere to the guidelines. So I call that out. That is hypocrisy. Not only do the things that you say in your videos do make yourself a hypocrite, but by the things that you've written. For example, on the 29th of March, you did a video on your channel, and in the description of that, you asked people to please stay at home. Yet, you're not staying at home, are you? Nor are you exercising local to home. You're travelling long distances. That's one example of your hypocrisy. Another example of your hypocrisy. This is from your Twitter feed. And on your Twitter feed, on the same date, on the 29th of March, look at one of these tweets. And you write on your Twitter feed, it's at this time other people are most vulnerable. So it's very important to stay home and not be in contact with anyone, even members of your family if possible. Being very careful is very important and very crucial at this time. Your own words, Rose, on your Twitter page. Yet you are not staying at home and you are not being very careful because you are going to inherently dangerous locations where you could hurt yourself, such as climbing over 5-bar gates, going in derelict buildings that you know before you even go inside them, where there's notice saying that they're structurally unsafe and dangerous, or in Kev's case, handling broken glass, albeit with gloves. So you're also being a hypocrite, Rose. And I'm not even going to get into all the nonsense you talk about the coronavirus and all the conspiracy nonsense you get into. Let's not even go there. Anyway. And then there's the people who are watching your live streams, typing in your live chat, watching all the live streams. Now, many of those people may not be in the UK, so they may not be familiar with the government guidelines about what you're doing. But they're clearly live streams, and many of the people, if not most, probably the people are actually within the UK. And one person who was there on 2 of the live streams you did when you went out on the 9th and the 10th, who I can also show to be a hypocrite, is in a paranormal channel called Above Paranormal. Why is he a hypocrite? Because he was watching your live streams, virtually both of them, that you went, the 2 times you went to the farm, I believe, off the top of my head. He was there chatting away, being jovial, watching the whole live stream. He's also a moderator there, although that may or may not mean very much on your channel. But, because I think you have quite a lot of moderators. Anyway, he was a moderator there, he was chatting away, he was watching the majority of the live streams on at least 2 of those days that I mentioned. He didn't seem to have a problem with what you're doing. Did he say anything about, oh, should you be doing this, or I don't think this is right? No, I don't recall him ever saying anything like that. But what I did find, I found a post by Above Paranormal from about a week ago. Now on another YouTube channel, this was on the channel name is Life After Life TV Productions. That's not relevant, but I'm just quoting the source. And Sammy made a video called Big Ego Ghost Hunters with No Common Sense. And the whole subject of that video that Sammy made on the 28th of March was about paranormal investigator teams going out to do live streams and investigations at locations. And Sammy was advocating not people shouldn't be doing this, and that it shows a lack of common sense and it's irresponsible, etc., etc. And one of the comments Above Paranormal made on that video said, "Why is anyone surprised? It's always the same culprits. They have no morality or ethics regarding the subject matter of their videos, so why were we expecting them to have any when it comes to doing the right thing in regards to the preservation of life?" Now what he's referring to there in that underlined bit on the last line is going out doing paranormal investigations. Yet Above Paranormal seems to have no problem with another channel, Bumfluff Paranormal, Rose and Kev, going out and doing multiple paranormal investigations, driving out to locations to do it. He doesn't seem to have a problem with that. So it seems like hypocrisy to me. Another person who was also in the live streams is Julie. I've blanked out her surname, even though she puts it there. She said that she agrees. Yet she was also watching Bumfluff. She was also in the live stream watching Bumfluff Paranormal's live stream and their journey and where they were. She was commenting quite a lot during it. So, and she's also in the UK. How do I know that? Because she stated so in the live stream. So 2 channels, 2 people, both in the UK, both know what the guidance are, condemning people for going out to do investigations on one video, yet quite happy to watch a live stream, participate in the live chat, and watch it, and have no bones about it apparently whatsoever. More hypocrisy. Now, returning to Rose and Kev, just to close this up. So to Rose and Kev of Bumfluff Paranormal, aka Hell's House. I hope I've been able to show what you've done and why you shouldn't do it, and why it doesn't adhere to the government guidelines, and why it's irresponsible, and why you're creating an unnecessary risk. As I say, I do know your exact address. The reason I know it is because if I need to report you to the police, if you continue to do this, I will report you, and that's why I got it. How do I have your address? As I said, you disclosed it on one of your recent videos. Maybe you should be more careful about what information you give out on the internet. I also know the exact car you've got, the colour of your car, and the car registration number. I also believe I know your full name, Rose, from your Twitter handle, although I did block it out on my video screenshot. So if I or someone else needs to report you to the police because you're continuing to not adhere to the government guidance, I've got all the information I need. I don't want to have to do that, and I persuaded, as I said, I persuaded the other person I had contact with about this not to do so, because I said I would do this video. So this is a warning. Communities for thousands of years help to police themselves. I don't want to involve the police. I would prefer not to involve the police. If this video has the effect of stopping you doing what you've been doing on those 3 days consecutively recently, by taking long journeys out to the countryside or wherever to do paranormal investigations, and it has that effect, then good. But if I encounter that you are continuing to do it, I will therefore feel obliged to report you to the police. Now, if you attempt to make a video or post anywhere online trying to defend what you've been doing or justify it, I will infer that to mean that you think it's okay and that you'll continue to do it. And in that case, I'll also report you to the police. So the best thing you can do, Rose and Kev, don't make a video attacking me. Don't make a video trying to defend what you did or justify it or mitigate it. Whether you will mix in with someone else or not is irrelevant. You are still breaking the guidance. Clearly. If you continue to do it, I will feel obliged to report you to the police. I'd rather not have to. I'm sure you don't want that to happen. So please, and this goes for other people as well, please be sensible. Please think. Please be responsible. Do not create unnecessary risks where you may hurt yourself and have to put a burden on the NHS by going to unsafe locations where you might get hurt, where the risk could be completely mitigated by you not going there, by making unnecessary and long car journeys where there could be a road accident, whether through your fault or not. If you don't do the journey, you can't be involved in the accident. So please don't make long journeys to different places, and don't visit locations that are inherently unsafe where you might get injured. Because if you get hurt and you need to be admitted to a hospital, that's putting a burden on the NHS, where they're trying to use the capacity they have to deal with the increasing influx of people who are seriously being affected by coronavirus. And if you are admitted to a hospital yourself, you may contract coronavirus. Or if you have it, even if you don't know that you have it, you may pass it on to someone else. You may pass it on to an NHS worker. So please, be sensible and don't be a hypocrite. So I'm going to leave it there. But please, Rose and Kev, please don't do this again. And please, do not try to make a video or post trying to justify or mitigate what you've been doing or defend yourself or attack me. Because if you do, I will take that to mean that you think what you did is okay, and therefore I'll feel obliged to report you to the police, because clearly this video hasn't had the effect that I wanted, and you still think it's alright to go and continue to do what you've been doing, when it's not okay. And it's demonstrably not okay. So I will end the video there, and I wish everyone be safe, stay at home as much as possible, and protect the NHS.